What is up, family? Welcome into another edition of Make Every Second Count Live with me, your host and international award-winning Make Every Second Count speaker, Jeff Marconette Jr. I'm so pumped up to say that each and every time I get to say it because from where I came from, that it's a real treat that I get to say that. But tonight we're going to be talking about breaking the narrative, writing your own memoir, healing through story, food, and truth. So I definitely ask you if you would please share this episode out. Invite all kinds of people to watch this episode. And don't forget to give us all kinds of thumbs up, hearts, frowny faces, cry faces. Heck, you can even get mad at us. I don't care. Just help us trick the algorithm on any of the socials that we're on. Also, because we want to have more of a conversation than making a presentation, please keep the comments coming. Ask as many questions as you would like, and we will for sure answer them. But with no further ado, I would like to bring to the stage Miss Brown herself. Hello! How are you this evening?
I am great, and thanks so much for having me.
Not a problem. So, if you would like to go ahead and tell everybody a little bit about yourself, tell them who you are, where you're from, and what you do. I'm going to be inviting a few people on my phone. So I am looking down, but I am paying attention too.
That sounds great, and thanks again for having me. And I'm Jeanette Brown from Don't Sum Me Up, and I am rewriting my future by reporting my past. And I have worn a lot of hats in my life, including journalist. Um,
Oh.
and I reported on business for Business Week and later the city of New York. And I spent a lot of my life reporting on other people and other things, and very often things I knew very little about, um, while neglecting to report on myself and just taking the story I was handed about myself as truth. And then my parents died. My mom died when I was 25, and my dad
Oh,
died when I was 39.
that's a
And
heartbreaker.
it is very difficult to lose parents at any age, and it was earlier than I was ready for. And it did change my life profoundly, especially my dad's death. When I was almost 40, he left me 60 boxes chronicling his life from birth that I was responsible to find a permanent home for. But that could be delayed if I wanted to use it to write, which felt like my dad in his will assigning me to write a book about him using this archive that he had amassed over many years.
So he left you work.
He left, and that was not it. That was like just a one facet of the work he left me. But because of the nature of our relationship, I just picked it up and started doing it. And in the course of doing it and going through all these boxes, I realized that I had married my father, um, really hoping to do the exact opposite. And in many ways, it was the exact opposite, but in so many other ways, it was just the same. And so the assignment from my father helped me see that and helped me know that I needed to leave my marriage. And so suddenly I needed to leave my marriage with two small children and 60 boxes of shit to move around. Sorry, I don't, um,
Sorry.
so was it's been an assignment on top of an assignment within an assignment. But I'm learning a ton from it, and I learned in the process that I'm not writing a book about my dad, who assigned me to write a book about him. I'm writing a memoir. I'm writing a book about myself. Um, and
Wow.
that process and understanding that the story he gave me was his story, not my story. And we all have to tell our own stories. Like,
That's
I,
powerful.
if I can write my story, I may get around to trying to do justice to his, but my priority is my story. And it it's been a long journey. I just turned 50, so it's been a decade of dealing with both the loss of orphanhood and the loss of both parents, and then understanding that it meant the loss of my marriage and my life as I knew it and imagined it. Like, there's been a great deal of loss. And I've moved 10 times in the past 5 years with all these freaking boxes. So, it's been, there's comedic content once I can get to that stage of healing. But it has all been healing. And it has taught me the profound value of memoir writing. And again, I didn't start out to write memoir. I thought I was writing a book about my dead dad. And I didn't think I had a story to write, which is never true of anyone.
Yeah.
Um, but it took me thinking I needed to write about my dad to get myself to writing conferences where I was hanging out with people who were writing memoir, where I was understanding that I do have a story, um, and then just again applying the career skills that I'd had as a journalist to my own story, and finding in that process self-compassion, which I'd never had before because I always bought the lies of the people who were telling me that it was my fault that I was being abused, as we do, until we report our own story.
Yeah.
And it changed, and this all was happening in tandem with my dad dying. And so my ex just didn't know what happened, and he was like, who is this person? Because I seemed completely different, because I stopped being willing to be abused. And it was like a light switch, because once I realized that it wasn't my fault, it wasn't my fault. So why the was I going to put up with being abused?
Yeah.
But really, up until then, I believed it was my fault. So reporting my own story and understanding that it wasn't my fault gave me the blessing of self-compassion, which was a game changer. And
Yeah.
then it brought me to grief, because there were some things that happened to me that are really pretty terrible. And you have to feel that grief or it stays inside you. But
Yeah.
then when you do feel the grief, it brings me to gratitude for all that it taught me and all that could have been worse and so many things. And then weirdly, when I go through this process of reporting the truth, finding self-compassion, feeling grief, and then feeling gratitude, I naturally want to feed my body and brain whole, healthy things. And so I am drawn toward culinary therapy and brain food. And those six things are what I need to live a whole healthy life. And so I try to do memoir writing on Mondays, self-compassion on Tuesdays, grief on
Wow.
Wednesdays,
Hmm.
gratitude on Thursdays, culinary therapy on Fridays, and brain food on Saturdays, and Sundays I rest. Um,
Can you tell us what is memoir writing? I mean,
I want to make
how
it
is that
open
done?
to as open as can be. Like, there are many thoughts on this, but for me, it has actually been showing up on social media, writing what I'm doing that day. And it's not usually like 8 a.m. I went to like there's a little more depth to it than that. But it is me being present in my daily life and sharing it. That is one facet of memoir. It's not the only. It can take so many forms, and my book will be very much a hybrid. I am a hybrid. It's going to have a bunch of different stuff in it, but some of it will be just con- the contemporary day, what I did that day, and how I felt about it, because that is life.
Yeah.
And we rarely take the time to write it down. And until I became disciplined and made myself do it, I didn't do it. Like I said, I wrote about anything but myself
Yeah.
for my whole career. But when I started writing about myself, I started really learning about myself. And that, I really think, is the work we're meant to do here on Earth. um,
So you're saying that you think that learning about ourselves and our own lives is what we're really meant to do on Earth?
because nothing teaches me more about others than really, truly understanding myself.
All right.
And the
That,
more I share it, the more I connect to others. And I think that's what we're meant to do here on Earth. Like, as humans, we're social creatures. We're meant to tell our stories and have them impact others. And I think mirror neurons and the ways that we literally influence one another, um, is super important. Like, we have them for a reason. We're here to tell our stories, and have those stories impact the people around us, and vice versa. um, and that is what I do, because it heals me, and it connects me to other people who likewise feel a need to tell their stories. And again, the more we understand our own stories, the better we are capable of understanding the stories of others. And it feels narcissistic. And believe me, like, my whole thing is I've been surrounded by people who were too focused on self. And I'm afraid of that. And I could very easily be accused of that, given that I write so much about myself.
yeah.
The reason that I do so is because it gives me so much insight into others. And
Wow.
um
Power.
it and I encourage it for all of us. um
All right. So can you tell us a little bit about your other steps? I know one was culinary therapy, one was brain food, and just go through each step and tell us a little bit about it. Tell us the benefits of it and why you like it.
For sure. So memoir writing, like I said, brings me naturally to self-compassion, even though I couldn't find my way there for 40 years. But once I found my way there, it was very easy, and the science supports it. To see that self-compassion is a whole lot better than toxic criticism. And when we can learn how to have kindness towards self instead of toxic criticism, we actually grow and thrive. And those of us who grew up with toxic criticism came to have toxic self criticism to feel protected from the external toxic criticism. And so it takes a lot. Like I said, it was 40 years before I could begin to let go of the very toxically critical voices in my head, and they can still come out.
Yeah.
Um, but I spend every Tuesday thinking, writing, talking about self compassion to remind myself that it needs to be my baseline. Because, and I work with small children right now, and it's just, we need to treat ourselves the way we would treat small children. And self compassion is what, or compassion towards small children is what helps them grow and thrive, not authoritarian, disciplinarian, punitive control. And I have parents who grew up with that kind of parenting, and so some of it filtered down to me, and I try to have it filter down not at all to my kids, because it just the science supports that we grow and thrive with love, not with criticism. Um, so self compassion is just critical. And for those of us who didn't grow up with it for any number of reasons, to think about it once a week is not a bad idea. And it can take any number of forms. And like meditation is major self compassion for me. Writing, every way that I regulate my nervous system is really me providing self compassion. And just that I now spend my life looking for ways to regulate my nervous system when it is dysregulated. That alone is self compassion. Um, and so I have compassion for people who struggle with having self compassion, because it was me for a long time. And I'm here to say that, like, you really, really do make more progress when you can be kind towards self. But it's hard work, and I get it. So be kind, even if it's hard to be kind towards self.
Yeah. I want to point out here that Didier Schwab said, yes, Jeanette, I couldn't agree more. If we truly want to understand our environment as humans, we need to know who we really are. The real work always begins within. So a lot of people are feeling what you say in the comments, and I just wanted to point that out to you.
Thank
So
you.
you're talking. You went through memoir writing and self compassion. And
And
what
then
what
there's grief. And
grief?
nobody really likes to talk about grief. I write a newsletter, a weekly newsletter on Substack about grief. Um, and, it's kind of a taboo subject. And having lost my mom and my dad and my husband and like, I've lost a lot of things. So I have a lot of grief. And I can't live and keep it in. So again, just like I need to devote a day to self-compassion, I need to devote a day to grief, to like feeling the sadness, to feeling the hard feelings that you want to make go away. But the problem is, when you try to make them go away, they just grow. So
Yeah,
instead, I say, okay, Wednesdays are for woe. I'm going to write about grief. I'm going to feel grief. I'm going to meet people in their grief. And not everybody likes it. Believe me, I used to be this inveterate people pleaser who never expressed any grief,
yeah,
and because people don't like it. And I'm having to contend with the grief of not being pleasing to many people by being more honest. Especially in showing up in my grief. And so I do it for my own health. I know, because I'm not good if I push it all down.
yeah.
But I also do it defiantly, to say I don't think other people are either. And so I'm going to show up in my grief. It's going to be uncomfortable for people. And that's part of the point. Um, and so it's, so I do that on Wednesdays. I show up and write about grief.
Grief,
Um,
right? Well,
and
what
then on
about Thursdays?
Gratitude, because once I feel
Gratitude.
my grief, it brings me to gratitude, and I just have this like overwhelming desire to be grateful for all the things in my life that are amazing, and there are so many of them.
Yeah,
And it's not a like I feel the grief, but it's not that I'm stuck in grief or only things are grief worthy. Like, there are a lot of things that are amazing, and thankfully, because I wouldn't be able to survive the grief otherwise. And I actually believe that we live in a universe that prefers balance.
yes.
And so the more I can show up and be true and honest about my grief, the more natural and easily I can show up and be the same about my gratitude. And so I do that Thursdays. And then
You
on
know,
Fridays,
so I wake up every morning, and for 5 years I posted on Facebook. The first thing, even before I got out of bed, even before I went to the bathroom in the morning, I am so thankful to be given today, and I will make it a great day. Now, I have changed that up a little bit. I still post on Facebook something very similar to that, but I try to mix it up so it's not the same every day anymore. But yes, I do feel that gratitude is something that each and every person should practice in one way, shape, or form.
I couldn't agree more. And so I practice in a bunch of different ways, and I write about and I have a newsletter about gratitude on Thursdays on Substack. And I devote that day to thinking and practicing gratitude in a number of different ways. And then Friday is culinary therapy. And by that, I mean feeding myself good, healthy food. And sometimes that means cooking for myself. Sometimes it means cooking with my kids who are 13 and 15. And sometimes it means eating out and celebrating the amazing food that I eat out. And I'm a chef in addition to being a journalist, and so
Wow.
I've um, I have I have yet to make any money writing about food, but am well trained to do so, and I'm starting to try to do that on my own. And then lastly is brain food. I pour a ton of content into my head, and it changes my life, and I keep trying to commit to showing up and reviewing it and being thankful for it and just really giving props. And I will probably never do justice to everything that I put into my head, but I want to do better. And so I am trying to spend Saturdays devoted to showing up and sharing what has changed me. Um, and I'm just so greedy. I take in so much that it feels hard to keep up with it. So I will confess that I've made more progress on the other 5 channels so far, and that's my I feel like it might be the most important one. They're all important. I need them all. That's why I make them part of my life plan, and I'll meet anybody wherever they want to be. They don't have to do all 6. Like, I think that there are benefits for each of the 6. I
Yeah.
personally need to do all 6, so I've trained myself. But I'm happy to meet anyone who just wants to do some writing, who just wants to focus on self compassion, who just has some grief they need to work through. Gratitude, and that's what I'm trying to do. And I have a website that lays out some of that, although I'll confess that I haven't kept it up
Yeah.
in the past several years, but saying this here will help motivate me. And I show up a lot on Instagram and Facebook, um, at Don't Sum Me Up. And I write about all these things in all the places I am. Um,
That's awesome. So, how exactly did you come up with these 6?
um, like I said, it was organic. The memoir writing brought me to self compassion. And then from self compassion, I was able to actually finally face my grief. Because without self compassion, I kept running from it. And so once I had self compassion, I could face my grief. And then once I faced my grief, I just was overwhelmed with gratitude and recognized how much gratitude practices, even in the midst of grief, had kept me going.
Yeah.
Um, and then culinary therapy, as I said, I'm a chef, and I also suffered from an eating disorder for a lot of my life. And so, like, overcoming issues with food while also really loving and reveling in food. And food was also a huge part of my family of origin. So if learning healing through food has been sort of a lifelong mission, and I feel like I've now finally accomplished it for self and really want to help others with it. And I think what we eat is so key to who and how we are.
Yeah.
um and then, like I said, brain food, I just consume, like, my curiosity saved my life. I had some real hardships, but I always um, it never stopped me from learning, and learning just became kind of my go-to salve. And that's a great addiction to have. I've had some other addictions that have not been quite as great, but the curiosity and the learning, um and again, I want to be a good literary citizen. I want to share the love. I want to sing to others about things that changed my life. I want to thank writers. So I have a lot of motivation to try to really show up and sing the praises of the things that changed my life.
Yeah. I completely understand that because that is one of the main things that I do is I go out and talk about the things that changed my life, and I try to teach other people those things without making them go through what I went through in order to learn it. I just want to instill the knowledge in them. I don't want them to have to deal with the pain, the grief, the turmoil, whatever you want to call it. But I want them to know what I have learned.
Absolutely. And I want anyone who goes through anything close to things I've experienced to not suffer quite as much.
Yeah.
And I feel like I was I was put here to suffer. I don't want to say that. Like I don't want to think I'm always going to suffer. I don't believe that. But I did go through some of the suffering that I went through to be able to be of service to
Yeah.
others. And I'm here for that. I'm down with that assignment.
Yeah.
Um
I get that.
so
So if you would put importance on one of those things, which one would you say is the most important?
well, because I just know it's a domino effect and people are going to take the whole ride anyway. I say start with memoir writing and don't and I should change it, and maybe I will. I don't want it to feel I don't want people to get hung up on, do I know how to write memoir? Just start with writing down your story. Don't make
Yeah.
it fancy pants. Just write down your story. Whatever comes out is your story. And the way it comes out is part of your story too, and pretty fascinating. So
Yeah.
it's without judgment. It's just finding the time to write it down. And for
Yeah.
me, that took an accountability partner. And I wouldn't do it. I couldn't do it before that. So I found a writing partner, and we would meet on the phone once a week, and then we got addicted to 3 times a week. But I couldn't ever make the time for myself. But once we started making that time together, I then started learning how to also make the time for myself because I got addicted to writing
Yeah.
um, about myself. Because again, my career had been writing about other things, or one of my careers. But it so I say start with writing your stories down, and we all have stories, and it doesn't matter how it sounds coming out, just get it down. And if it's easier to dictate, I am not a good dictator. I need the separation of my word, like the something about that helps me be more real. So I need to write things down, but I write while I walk, um, on my phone, and it has been life changing, because I can process the emotions that come up as they come up,
Yeah.
both in the written form by typing with my thumbs and by moving my feet. So it's a whole lot of bilateral stimulation going on
Yeah.
that's soothing my nervous system, and it's allowed me to process a whole bunch of trauma.
Yeah.
Um,
That makes a lot of sense.
But I
So
say start
yeah.
small, and get a friend to help if it was really life changing for me to say, I'm going to, just like getting your gym shoes and going to the gym with a friend. Just, it's hard to do it otherwise for some of us. And
Yeah.
having a partner changed the game. And then I just started doing it. And once you start doing it, it's just like the gym. You quickly see how good it feels
Yeah.
and the impact that it has on the rest of your life. And that's, I mean, just that's like word to the wise. It changed my life completely. I
Yeah.
mean, everything changed, and that's hard, but and it's not linear either, but it is all moving toward something better. And I would wholeheartedly recommend it, but just buckle your seatbelt.
Yeah.
Um,
Always buckle your seatbelt. Although you don't have yours on right now.
I'm not driving though. I'm
Oh,
parked.
all right. Hey, I have to tease. So, I I thank you so much for coming on here tonight. I thank you for being here with me and my guest and telling us a little bit about your journey of memoir writing, self compassion, grief, gratitude, culinary therapy, and brain food. Those are amazing right there. But I need everybody out there, including you, to do me a favor this week, next week, and for the rest of your life. I need you to make every second count. Why? Because you never know when those seconds are going to run out on your one life. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you back here next Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you again, Jeanette. You have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. You too. Thanks so much for having me.
Yep, have a great one.